September 19, 1944. Münsterbusch, Germany. The metal hatch felt cold under Lafayette Poole's gloved hands as he stood in the commander's spot, looking at the trees ahead in the dark before dawn. His orders that morning were simple and almost protective. No leading the attack today. P. You and your crew are going home for a war bonds tour. Stay on the side. Stay safe, but standing in that turret, 6 miles from Arcane, with the Sigrid lines, concrete teeth behind them, P knew one truth, that almost 3 months of fighting had taught him, in war, safety was never real. The Sherman tank under him, painted with the words in big white letters, was the 3rd tank with that name he had commanded. The first 2 tanks had been destroyed. This one, in less than an hour, would join them. That moment would end the most deadly tank-killing run in American military history. The morning air smelled of diesel exhaust and burnt gunpowder from yesterday's battle. Poole could hear other Shermans moving into place. The poo, clanking of their treads on cobblestones, and the quiet voices of tank commanders checking positions over the radio, somewhere ahead, hidden in the buildings and rubble of Münsterbusch. German soldiers waited with their 88mm guns and Panzer rockets. P had faced these weapons many times over the past months. He had learned to respect them, to fear them, but never to let fear stop him. His whole way of tank fighting followed one rule. Strike first. Strike hard. Get close before the enemy could use their stronger guns. That boldness had kept him alive through 21 big attacks, through the loss of 2 tanks, and through countless close calls where German bullets missed by inches or bounced off armor, but this morning with home and safety. Only days away. Poole's luck was about to end. June 14, 1941. Fort Sam Houston, Texas. The enlistment papers had the signature of a 21-year-old farm boy from ODM, Texas. He had left his engineering studies at Texas College of Arts and Industries to serve his country. Lafayette Green Poole stood 6'2" tall, a lean body shaped by years, working the dry South Texas soil, his hands tough from rope and plow work before they would learn the controls of a 33-ton Sherman tank. He had been born 5 minutes after his twin brother, John Thomas, on July 23, 1919, in the small farming community of Odom, though he grew up on a farm near the neighboring town of Sinton. Both towns sat in the coastal plains of South Texas, where summer heat exceeded 100 degrees Celsius and rain remained scarce. Life on a Texas farm in the 1920s meant hard physical labor from sunrise to sunset, working cattle, mending fences, repairing equipment with whatever materials could be secured or improvised. Electricity remained a luxury few rural families enjoyed. Running water came from wells pumped by hand. Entertainment consisted of radio programs when batteries could be afforded, and community gatherings at church on Sundays. P and his twin brother John Thomas were close, despite their different temperaments. John Thomas would eventually join the Navy, serving throughout the war on ships in the Pacific. Their sister, Tenny Mae, completed the P family. Their father, John McKinley Poole, and mother Marion Lee Ruth Poole instilled in their children the values of hard work, discipline, and service. Young Lafayette, who went by the nickname Leaf among family and friends, demonstrated exceptional athletic ability and academic aptitude from an early age. He attended Taft High School, graduating in 1937, where he excelled in football as a star player whose speed and competitive drive made him stand out on the field. But P's talents extended beyond athletics. He possessed a sharp mind and fierce determination to succeed academically. After graduating from Taft High School in 1937, P enrolled at Corpus Christi College Academy an all-boys Catholic preparatory school known for its rigorous academic standards. P thrived in this challenging environment, applying the same intensity he brought to football and farm work to his studies. He graduated as class valedictorian in 1938, an achievement that opened doors for his future education. P then enrolled at Texas College of Arts and Industries in Kingsville, now known as Texas A&M University, Kingsville. Majoring in engineering, his aptitude for mathematics and mechanical systems suggested a promising career in engineering, but P's education would be interrupted by world events beyond his control. During his time in school, P also pursued boxing competing. In the 165 pulled weight class, boxing suited his temperament perfectly. The sport demanded aggression, quick reflexes, strategic thinking, and the mental toughness to take punishment while still fighting. Proved very skilled in the ring, compiling an impressive amateur record of 41 wins with no defeats. His aggressive style and strong punches earned him the sectional Golden Gloves Championship in New Orleans, Louisiana. The National Golden Gloves organization invited him to compete in the national finals, an opportunity that could have started a professional boxing career. P declined. He had other plans. Engineering studies called to him more than the uncertain life of a professional fighter, but the discipline, aggression, and competitive spirit that boxing built would help him in a very different kind of fight. By 1941, the world was at war. Germany had taken most of Europe. Britain stood alone against the Nazi war machine. Japan was expanding across Asia. The United States officially stayed neutral, but everyone knew American entry into the fight was only a matter of time. Young men all over America faced a choice: wait to be drafted or enlist and have some choice in which branch of service to join. P made his choice. On June 14, 1941, exactly 6 months before Pearl Harbor would force America into the war, Lafayette P walked into the recruitment office at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio and joined the United States Army. He was 21 years old, stood 6'2", weighed about 175 lbs, and had the body of an athlete and the mental discipline of a scholar. The Army would change him into something else: a tank commander who would become the deadliest in American military history. The newly forming 3rd Armored Division at Camp Beauregard, Louisiana, was Poole's introduction to mechanized warfare. The division had started on April 15, 1941, just 2 months before peace enlistment as part of America's huge military buildup ready for war. The 3rd Armored Division would get the nickname Spearhead for its role in breaking German defenses across France and into Germany, always leading the advance, always pushing deeper into enemy land than any other unit. P was assigned to Company 3rd Battalion 32nd Armored Regiment, where he would serve. As a tank commander in the 3rd Platoon, this assignment would shape his life. The 3rd Armored Division showed America's focus on mechanized warfare, a new idea that had been very powerful in German hands when they conquered Poland and France. The division's structure used lessons learned from German panzer operations. It combined tank battalions with armored infantry artillery engineers and support units, all trained to fight together as one. The division's main striking power came from its tank battalions equipped first with the M3 Lee medium tank, a stop-gap design with a 75mm gun mounted in a hull sponson and a 37mm mm gun in a turret. The M3 Lee was old and outdated before it even entered service, but American tank production in 1941 could not make better designs fast enough. The M4 Sherman, which would become the standard American medium tank for the rest of the war, was just starting production when P joined the Army. Training at Camp Beauregard was hard and demanding. and his fellow tankers learned to operate, maintain, and fight from armored vehicles in every possible condition. They practiced shooting until they could find targets and fire in seconds. They learned radio procedures to work with other tanks, infantry, and artillery. They studied German tactics and equipment, learning the strengths and weaknesses of the panzers they would face in battle. They did endless field exercises, pretending to attack, defend, and chase enemies. The Louisiana countryside became their classroom, its forests and swamps giving land that looked like the European battlefields where they would fight. Poole's natural aggression, tactical thinking, and strong competitive drive made him stand out. Officers saw his intensity in training, his refusal to accept second place in anything. During shooting practice, P's tank was always among the best in the battalion. During tactical exercises, P showed an instinctive understanding of land and enemy positions better than anything taught. In classrooms, he studied everything about tanks, how they moved, how they fought, where they were weak. He learned to read land like a book, finding positions that gave advantages for shooting, hiding, and moving forward or back. Most importantly, P showed leadership. The men under him respected him, trusted him, and would follow him anywhere. That trust would be earned and earned again, many times in battle. P pushed himself and his men, demanding the best, making them go through endless shooting drills, driving practice, and tactical exercises. He was not cruel or random in what he asked. He just knew that in battle the difference between a well-trained crew and a weak one was the difference between life and death. Every second saved in finding. A target meant firing first. Every round that hit meant one less enemy tank shooting back. Every correct radio call meant better teamwork and support. Poole drilled these lessons into his crew until their actions became automatic. Load, aim, fire, reload became a rhythm as natural as breathing. Identify, target, check, distance, adjust fire became second nature. The crew would need all that training when they finally went into combat, when the chance came to become. And Officer P said no. Commissioned officers led from battalion or company level, controlling many tanks and support units from command posts. P wanted to fight from a tank to lead from the front, where he could see the enemy and make split second. Tactical choices. He wanted to stay close to his crew, close to the fight. That choice would define him. Staff sergeants normally did not command platoons in battle, but P's special skills and bold leadership made him lead multiple tanks in attack. After attack, trusted by his bosses to do missions usually done by lieutenants or captains. Training kept going through 1942 and into 1943, moving beyond Camp Beauregard to other places. The 3rd Armored Division went to the Desert Training Center in the Mojave Desert of California and Arizona, where the wide-open land and harsh heat gave great practice for possible fighting in North Africa. The desert training tested men and machines under extreme heat, choking dust, and land with no hiding. Spots. Tank leaders learned to navigate by dead reckoning across empty land. Crews learned to fix their vehicles in conditions that made metal expand. Seals fail and systems overheat. The lessons in the desert would be very useful, though the 3rd Armored Division would fight in Europe, not Africa. After desert training, the division went to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, for final preparation before going overseas. The rolling hills and forests in Pennsylvania looked more like Europe than Louisiana, swamps, or California deserts. Here the division practiced combined arms tactics that would be very important in France and Germany. Tanks moved with infantry support, protected by artillery, with engineers ready to remove obstacles and clear mines. Radio work improved. Maintenance got better. Weak points in organization and tactics were found and fixed. By late 1943, the 3rd Armored Division was as ready for combat as training could make it. During these years of training, P had important personal events. He married Evelyn Wright while on leave in December 1942, a brief moment of normal life and happiness before he would leave for the war that would define his generation. Evelyn would wait for him through the whole war, writing letters that kept P going during the darkest times of combat, raising a family that would eventually include 8 children, 4 sons and 4 daughters. The marriage would last until P's death nearly 50 years later, showing the strength of the bond they made during those short moments together before P left for England. In September 1943, P and the 32nd Armored Regiment boarded troop ships in New York Harbor, crossing the Atlantic to get ready in England. The crossing took about 2 weeks, with thousands of soldiers packed into changed passenger ships and cargo ships sleeping in tight spaces, facing rough seas, and the constant fear of German submarines. The convoy zigzagged across the Atlantic to avoid submarine wolf packs protected by destroyers that patrolled the edges, dropping depth charges whenever sonar showed possible submarines. P and his fellow tankers got safely to Liverpool in late September 1943. The 3rd Armored Division would spend 9 months in England from September 1943 to June 1944, still training and getting ready for the cross-channel invasion that everyone knew was coming. The division stayed near Liverpool and Bristol in Somerset, doing exercises across the English countryside, learning to work with British units, and getting the last equipment and replacements that would bring the division to full strength. Waiting was hard. Everyone knew invasion and combat were coming, but no one knew exactly when or where. Rumors went around all the time. Security was strict. Training kept going. During this time, P had his first and only loss in combat sports. Joe Louis, the heavyweight boxing champion called the Brown Bomber, toured England in July 1944, doing exhibition matches for the troops. Louis was maybe the greatest heavyweight of all time, a cultural icon whose wins in the ring were symbols of American strength and courage. His second win over German boxer Max Schmeling in 1938 had huge political meaning as a rejection of Nazi racial ideas. Now, Louis used his fame to lift troop morale, sparring with soldiers in friendly matches. Few soldiers wanted to step in the ring with the world heavyweight champion, but P, always confident and competitive, volunteered for an exhibition match. The bout was set for July 4, 1944, Independence Day in Liverpool. It was meant to be friendly light sparring to entertain the troops. P had other plans. His competitive nature and boxer's instincts took over. He went after Louis, aggressively landing several strong hits. That surprised the champion. Louis responded by putting his arm around Poole and saying quietly, "White man, I am going to teach you a big lesson." The lesson came fast and complete. Louis showed P a boxing lesson using his faster speed, power, and skill. To dominate the young sergeant without hurting him, Louis could have knocked P out any time, but chose to show the big difference between amateur and professional boxing. P later said Joe Louis turned him every which way, but loose during that match. But P got something more important than winning. He learned that even great power and physical gifts could be beaten with the right tactics, right timing, and right move. He learned that aggression alone was not enough. Skill, timing, and tactical thinking mattered. Those lessons would help him in the battles ahead. June 23, 1944, the port of Weymouth, England, the 3rd Armored Division began boarding ships to cross to Normandy. The D-Day invasion had happened on June 6, 18 days before Allied forces had taken the beach and were moving inland against strong German defense. Now follow-up units like the 3rd Armored Division, would cross the channel to join the fight. The division's tanks and vehicles had been carefully made waterproof for the landing, with covers and seals over every opening to keep seawater from flooding engines and compartments while moving from landing craft to shore. The preparation was complete, but the men were still nervous. Everyone had heard stories about the chaos of D-Day, the deaths on Omaha Beach, the desperate fighting in the hedgerows. Now it was their turn. June 24, 1944, Omaha Beach, Normandy, France. The 3rd Armored Division landed 18 days after D-Day, in steady rain, that turned the beach into muddy chaos of men, vehicles, and equipment moving through crowded assembly areas. The beach still showed the damage from the invasion. Wrecked landing craft lay half underwater. Destroyed German fortifications were on the cliffs. Large supply dumps of ammo, fuel, food, and equipment covered every space. Military police tried to direct traffic, trying to keep order as thousands of vehicles moved inland toward assembly areas. The smell of salt water mixed with diesel exhaust, wet earth, and the lingering smell of explosives. Poole's 1st Sherman, an M4A1 with a 75mm main gun, came ashore without problems. The waterproofing worked, the engine started, and the tank moved up the beach under its own power. Over the next several days, the division gathered in their areas, removed waterproofing, test-fired weapons, did maintenance correctly, and got ready for combat. Poole's crew had trained together for months, building the kind of perfect teamwork that could mean the difference between life and death in battle. Now they would see if that training was enough for real fighting. He personally picked each member of his crew, choosing men whose skills and attitude fit together and matched his own bold style in combat. Corporal Wilbert Richards, called Baby because of his baby-faced look. Even though he was 24, was the driver, Richards was only 5. 4 tall, compact, and wiry, but very skilled at moving. The Sherman Poole liked to brag that Baby could park the 33-ton Sherman in downtown New York. During rush hour, an exaggeration that was basically true, Richards could thread the big tank through tiny village streets, reverse fast while under fire, and get the Sherman in the best spot to shoot with more skill than most drivers Richards drove. With his hatch open, when he could, having once been trapped inside a tank, when a hatch jammed during training that made him afraid of being stuck in a burning tank. A fear all tankers shared, but Richards felt it more. The open hatch gave him better sight and a quicker escape if the tank was hit, though it also made him more exposed to shell fragments and small guns. Private First Class Bertrand Close, just 17 and called schoolboy for his youth and wire-rimmed glasses, was assistant driver, and bow gunner using the .30 caliber Browning M19 19 machine gun in the front hull. Close came from Portland, Oregon, and looked young because he was one with smooth features and a small build that made him seem younger than he was, but looks fooled. People Close was deadly with that bow machine gun, taking out enemy soldiers with precise fire. His place in the right front of the tank gave him a good field of fire forward and to the right, covering the paths enemy soldiers would use to get close. Enough to attack the tank with Panzerfausts or magnetic mines. Close also helped with loading ammo during heavy fighting, passing rounds from storage racks to the loader when speed was important. Corporal Willis Ole, 29 years old, and nicknamed Groundhog, manned the main gun. Ole came from Illinois, older than the rest of the crew, and had a calm, steady attitude that was different from Poole's intensity. Ole aimed to see all of France through his gun sights, his face always marked by the shape of his tanker. Goggles. He kept his eye on the sight, constantly ready to fire at any moment. The gunner's job was maybe the hardest in the tank. The gunner had to find targets, fast, judge distance, choose. At the right moment, All of this had to happen in seconds often, while under enemy fire with explosions shaking the tank and smoke-blocking vision. All was excellent at this hard job. His perfect shots would destroy German tank after German tank in ETU, the coming months proving Poole's trust in him. Technician 5th grade, Delbert Boggs, 22 years old from Lancaster, Ohio, and called Jailbird, was the loader. His nickname came from his past. According to crew stories, Boggs had been arrested for manslaughter, and the court gave him a choice prison. Or the Army. Boggs picked the Army, bringing toughness and street smarts that helped in combat. Whether the story was totally true or a little exaggerated, it showed Boggs' character. He was tough, strong, and completely reliable under fire. The loader's job was very physical. A 75mm round weighed about 25 labbers, and the 76mm rounds they would use later weighed more. During heavy fighting, the loader might handle many rounds picking the right ammo when Poole told him, loading it smoothly in the small tank while it moved violently, then getting the next round ready. Boggs was thin but very strong and had lots of endurance. His speed and reliability in loading gave Peace Tank a rate of fire faster than most other Shermans. These 4 men, led by P, called themselves the Pups, and called their commander War Daddy, a name that showed both love and respect for the man who led them into hell again and again. The nickname War Daddy came during training, when Poole's intense focus on combat practice and his care for his crews. Safety made him both their leader and protector. P was younger than Ole, and not much older than the others, but his strong personality and leadership made him the natural center of the crew. They trusted him completely. That trust would be tested many times over the coming months. The crew often outscored other division crews in shooting during training. Their teamwork was perfect, each man knowing his job, trusting his brothers. When P called out a fire command, the crew acted like a machine. Driver, stop, gunner, sabot, tank, front, on the way. Boom! The whole process from seeing a target to firing could take less than 5 seconds with a good crew. Poole's crew could do it in 3. That speed would save their lives many times. Poole's fighting plan was simple and harsh, built from years of training and studying German tank tactics. Shoot, first shoot to kill. Always move forward, never retreat. He believed in getting close to the enemy, to ranges, where the Sherman's advantages in moving fast, shooting quickly, and crew skill could beat the Germans' better guns, and armored German tanks like the Panther and Tiger had stronger guns and thicker armor that could destroy a Sherman from far where the Sherman could not break their front armor. The solution was to never fight from far away. P moved in fast, trying to hit sides where even a Panther's armor could be broken, crushing German crews with fast, precise fire before they could use their stronger guns. Well, Poole was claustrophobic, preferring to ride exposed in the turret or on top of the tank rather than inside. This was both a weakness and a strength. The weakness was clear. Exposed in the turret, Poole was open to shell fragments, small guns, and the shock from nearby explosions. Many tank commanders were killed or hurt by fire that would not have gone through the tank's armor if they had stayed inside. But the strength was big. Standing in the open hatch or on top of the turret, P had much better sight than commanders who stayed inside looking through periscopes or vision slits. He could see danger earlier, find targets faster, and keep better awareness. He saw the battlefield in 3 dimensions instead of the narrow view. Periscopes gave that advantage often meant the difference between shooting first or getting shot first. In tank, fighting shooting first usually meant staying alive. Poole's battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Walter Richardson, was also a Texan. and the two men built a relationship based on respect and shared boldness. Richardson saw Pea's special abilities and gave him more responsibilities. Even though he was only a staff sergeant, Richardson said P rode his tank like a bucking bronco, always exposed, always open to danger, always leading from the front. That bold leadership style inspired Poole's crew and made him the natural choice to lead spearhead attacks. Richardson would call on P again and again to take the most dangerous missions, to lead attacks into the toughest defended spots. Poole never said no, never paused. He just climbed into his tank and led the way. Before Poole's Sherman went into fighting, it needed a name. Tank crews usually painted names on their tanks, making the IB steel machines they lived in and depended on. Personal Poole chose In the Mood from Glenn Miller's popular swing song that was a big hit in 1940 and stayed a favorite with American soldiers. The song's fast tempo and lively energy showed something about Poole's style in combat: bold, confident, unstoppable. The name would become famous June 29, 1944, Villars-Faussard, France, the 3rd Armored Division's Combat Command. I got orders to attack a German strongpoint northeast of St. Lo, a defense held by a reinforced Fusilier Battalion of the 303rd Infantry Division. This was the division's first real combat and Poole's first taste of battle. The mission was to hit a 3,000-yard deep bulge that protected the town of Villars-Faussard just east of the Via River and north of St. Lo. The Germans had built strong defenses using the Normandy hedgerows that turned every field into a natural fortress. The Normandy hedge was one of the biggest terrain problems American forces faced in France built. Over hundreds of years, the hedge had thick earth walls, 3 to 4 feet high, covered with dense bushes and small trees. They lined every field and road, making a maze of natural defenses that channeled movement and hid defensive positions. German soldiers and anti-tank guns could hide behind the hedge unseen until attackers were very close. Tanks trying to climb over hedgerows showed their weak belly armor to enemy fire. The first American attacks in Normandy had been costly failures as units learned these lessons with blood. American engineers found a solution. They cut big steel beams from German beach obstacles that had been made to stop D-Day and welded them to the fronts of Sherman tanks, making battering rams called Rhino tanks. These modified Shermans could smash through hedgerows at speed without going over them, keeping their armor safe while breaking into the next field. This change gave American tanks the ability to fight well in hedge country at Oro 900 hours. On June 29th, Combat Command started its attack with Task Forces X and Y, moving toward Villars-Faussard. Poole's platoon went with Task Force Y on the right flank. Artillery fired, first pounding German positions for 30 minutes before the tanks moved. The air was filled with the screams of shells and the thunder of explosions. Then came the order to move. Poole's Sherman went forward, with other tanks of Task Force Y grinding through the Normandy countryside toward the Germans. Visibility was only to the next hedgerow, sometimes just 50 yards. Radio chatter filled Poole's headset as other tank commanders reported enemy positions called for artillery and coordinated movements. The sharp crack of German 75mm anti-tank guns echoed across the battlefield, answered by the deeper boom of American tank guns. Black smoke from burning vehicles drifted across the fields. Poole saw German vehicles ahead, through gaps in the hedgerows. Half-track 10 Waihaus in Tranons 300 ward. He gave the fire command, and all fired. A 75mm high-explosive round. The round hit the German vehicle squarely, and it exploded in flames. Poole's crew destroyed 3 German vehicles and killed over 70 enemy soldiers on that first day of fighting. The violence and chaos of tank combat was exactly what P had trained for. Yet training could never fully prepare anyone for the real thing. The noise was huge. The fear was real. The adrenaline made time feel like it both sped up and slowed down. But Poole's training took over. He moved, boldly pushing forward, refusing to give up ground. His crew acted with discipline and skill, each man doing his job exactly as drilled in training. Then came the moment every tank crew feared. In the mood entered the village of Laforge, part of the Villiers-Fossard combat zone, moving down a narrow street between stone buildings. The village was supposed to be clear of enemies, but intelligence was not complete, and things changed fast in combat. As the Sherman rolled down the street, a German soldier with a Panzerfaust stepped from a doorway, aimed the shoulder-fired anti-tank weapon, and fired from less than 50 yards. The Panzerfaust was simple but deadly. A shaped charge warhead on a one-use launcher, it could go through over 200 mm of armor, more than enough to destroy a Sherman. The rocket motor ignited with a whoosh, and the warhead flew across the short distance, hitting in the Mood side armor with a metallic crash that shook the crew compartment. The shaped charge exploded against the armor, making a jet of super-hot metal that punched into the crew compartment. The tank shook violently. Smoke filled the inside, alarms went off. Poole gave the order bailout. All 5 crew members scrambled from the broken tank, moving. With the fast practiced speed that training gave them, P went out first through the commander's hatch, followed by all Richards, and Close exited through the driver and assistant driver hatches in the front. Boggs went through the loader's hatch. They all got out before the ammo could explode or fire spread through the tank. The crew had survived their first tank loss with no injuries, but the experience left them shaken, in the mood. The first Sherman with that name was destroyed. The crew had lasted exactly 5 days in fighting P, and his crew rejoined Task Force Y on foot, hitching rides on other tanks until they got a replacement. The battle for Villiers-Fossard went on through June 30th. Combat Command, a lost 31 tanks and 12 other vehicles in the 2-day fight. A harsh first lesson in tank combat in Normandy. German defensive fire was deadly and accurate. The land helped the defenders at every turn, but the attack worked. American forces took Villiers-Fossard and held it until helped by parts of the 29th Infantry Division. The 3rd Armored Division passed its first test, learning important lessons about hedgerow fighting that would help in the weeks ahead. July 1, 1944, somewhere in Normandy, P and his crew got their replacement tank, an M4A1 with the new 76 kb 18 mm main gun, called M4A1 76W Poole. He was the first tank commander in his regiment to get this better model, a reward for his work in the Villiers-Fossard battle. The new tank was much stronger. The W meant wet stowage, a safety feature where ammo racks were in containers with water, ethylene glycol, and a rust blocker called Ammudamp. This wet stowage cut the chance of big fires when the tank was hit. Old Shermans had a bad reputation for burning when hit, getting the name Ronson from German tankers after the cigarette lighter that said lights first time every time. The wet stowage made the crew much safer. The 76 mm gun was much better at going through armor than the 75 Avery's. While the 75 mm M3 gun could only hit a Panther's front armor at under 100 YD in perfect conditions, the 76 mm ME1 gun could go through Panther's side armor at 2,000 YD and front armor at up to 500 YDs. using armor-piercing ammo against German Mark V tanks. The most common German medium tank, the 76 mm, worked at even longer distances. The trade-off was the 76 mm Titziter fired weaker high-explosive shells than the 75 mm, making it a little less useful against soldiers and soft targets. But for Poole's bold close range tank hunting style, the stronger armor-piercing power was very valuable. Poole immediately had In the Mood painted on the new tank, keeping the tradition. The crew climbed into their new ride, learning the slightly different layout and controls. The 76 mm gun was longer and heavier than the 75 mm, which changed the tank's balance a little. The ammo storage inside was different too. The crew had to learn these changes to make the new tank their own. Over the next 6 weeks, P and his crew would write the most amazing chapter in American tank warfare history. With this vehicle, the hedgerow fighting of Normandy tested every tanker's skill and courage. The battle routine was simple and harsh. Move to a hedge. Take fire from the next hedge. Call for artillery fire through the hedge under cover. Clear enemy infantry. Move to the next hedgerow, repeat day after day. Visibility was short. Ambushes came from everywhere. German 75 mm Peel and 88 mm anti-tank guns hid behind every stone wall and hedge row, their long barrels hidden until American tanks got close. German soldiers with Panzerfausts snuck near American positions at night, waiting to fire shaped charges into tank sides or back. The tank crew casualty rate was huge, but Poole's instincts were amazing. He developed a sixth sense for reading land and finding likely enemy spots before they showed themselves. He watched shadows, patterns of plants, and sight lines from different spots. He learned to see signs of defensive setups, small changes in leaves that could hide a gun, and the best firing spots an experienced enemy would pick. This way of thinking like the enemy gave P a big advantage. He saw danger before it saw him. He attacked first, usually destroying enemy positions before they could fire back. One time at dusk near La Mesnil-Herman, P was about to tell his driver to stop for the night, when a shape appeared 50 ft ahead. A German 40 mm anti-aircraft gun was there, and its crew did not see the Sherman. The Germans were getting ready for night, moving around without expecting an attack. P knew he had only seconds to act. Without warning, without giving his position away over the radio, P shouted, "Gunner fire!" The command was pure instinct, pure aggression. Ola C.I. was already on the site. As always, his hands moved instantly to the firing controls. The 76 mm gun roared, sending an armor-piercing round straight at the German spot. The shell traveled the short distance in a fraction of a second, hitting the 40 mm gun squarely. The impact destroyed the gun and killed or wounded the crew instantly. The whole attack from Poole, seeing the target to the round, hitting, took about 3 seconds. That instant reaction from hundreds of hours of training and combat. Experience showed the crew's skill. They reached the ideal state for soldiers, where training is instinct and decisions happen faster than thinking. Another night fight near Colombey, France, almost went badly, but showed Poole's smart tactics and his crew's great skill. Poole's platoon moved in darkness slowly through hedgerow country where they could only see a few yards. Night moves were very dangerous for tanks. Visibility was low, even with the tank's simple infrared gear. Enemy soldiers could get very close at night. Friendly fire happened when units lost track of each other, but the plan needed night movement, and P led his platoon forward. Suddenly, In the Mood almost ran into a German Panther tank. The two tanks came around nearby corners. of a hedge and saw each other at only 30 yards. The Panther was one of the most feared tanks in the German army. It had a 75 Pretil TT Q-2 gun that could go through a Sherman's front armor at over 3 EU. The Panther's front armor was almost impossible for the Sherman's 76mm gun to penetrate, except at very close range. On paper, the Panther was better than the Sherman in almost every way, except maybe reliability. German tankers called the Sherman a Zippo, claiming they could kill Shermans easily, while American shells bounced off Panther armor. But battles are not on paper. Poole's better crew training and bold tactics canceled out the German advantage. Both tank commanders saw each other at the same time. Both gave fire orders. The Panther's crew fired 2 quick shots, but the dark surprise and rushed aim made both miss. One shell went over in the Mood's turret with a crack of moving air. The other hit the ground just in front of the Sherman and bounced up, missing the belly armor by inches. Ola's shot hit true. 176mm armor-piercing round at point blank went into the Panther's turret ring, where it met the hull, a weak spot. The round exploded inside the turret, setting off ammo and killing the crew instantly. The German tank burst into flames, lighting the area with orange fire, which ruined Poole's night vision, but also showed other German tanks. P immediately called for his platoon to attack more targets while moving back from the burning Panther before its ammo blew up. The fight lasted maybe 10 seconds from first contact to the Panther burning. P had won a duel with a technically better tank using better crew work, faster reactions, and more accurate shooting. News of Poole's kill spread through the battalion. Then the division American tankers feared the Panther, and Tiger stories went around about German super tanks that could destroy Shermans at ranges where American guns could not hit. Crew morale dropped facing these monsters, but P showed German tanks could be destroyed. Bold tactics, good crew training, and accurate shooting could beat technical disadvantage. This example pushed other tank commanders to fight more aggressively to close the distance where American speed and firing rate could make up for weaker guns and thinner armor. July 26, 1944, Operation Cobra started with one of the most powerful bombing campaigns in history. Over 500 American heavy bombers and 380 medium bombers dropped almost 4,000 tons of bombs on German positions south of St. Lo in just a few hours. The bombing was meant to crush German defenses and make a gap for American tanks to pour into open country. Beyond the hedge, the plan worked well despite tragic, friendly fire incidents that killed over 100 American soldiers, including Lieutenant General Leslie McNair. German lines fell apart. Their defensive positions no longer worked. Surviving soldiers were confused, disorganized, and could not fight back. The 3rd Armored Division led the attack, breaking through the broken German lines on July 29th and racing south into open land. After weeks of slow hedge fighting, where progress was only hundreds of yards per day, the division suddenly fought a fast-moving battle. Tanks ran down roads at 20 and 30 miles, covering more ground in hours than they had in weeks. German units, cut off by the fast American advance, tried to run, but found no escape. Thousands of Germans surrendered. Those who tried to fight were crushed by American firepower and speed. Poole's tanks led attack after attack, always first, always pushing forward. Being the spearhead tank was both an honor and a death sentence. The spearhead tank was first to face enemy fire, first to be hit by anti-tank guns and panzer soldiers, first to run into mines or ambushes. Casualty rates were huge, but P volunteered for the role again and again. His crew never questioned his choices. they trusted War Daddy to get them through, and somehow, despite the odds in the mood, kept rolling forward, kept destroying enemy. Vehicles kept surviving when other tanks were hit and burned. At Dyson, Belgium, near Legia P, stood out, while acting as platoon leader during the chase across France into Belgium. The 3rd Armored Division had moved so fast that P, a staff sergeant, was leading a platoon of 5 tanks because no officers were available. His column moved down a road when they came under fire from the left flank. German half-tracks and armored cars trying to escape the trap had stumbled into the American column. P ordered his column to keep moving while he turned in the mood to deal with the threat. The crew found the German unit, maybe a dozen vehicles, trying to move cross-country through fields and woods. Poole closed to effective range and opened fire, destroying 6 enemy vehicles in quick succession. The German column scattered some vehicles, trying to run others, firing back ineffectively. While P was dealing with this threat, a message came over the radio that a German Panther had appeared ahead and was attacking the American column. P had to decide keep cleaning up the vehicles he had already hit or race back to face the more serious threat of the Panther. He chose the latter. P ordered Richards to get back to the column at top speed. Sherman raced down the road at 25 mph, faster than was safe for the terrain and visibility, but P knew every second mattered. His column needed help fast. As they neared the reported Panther position, P scanned for the German tank, while Boggs loaded armor-piercing rounds, and Ola got ready to fire. P spotted the Panther firing at American Shermans from a hull-down spot behind a small rise. The German tank had the advantage of a ready firing position and was methodically attacking the American Column 2. Shermans were already burning. P could see crew members from one tank bailing out through flames and smoke. The Panther's attention was on the American column ahead, and it had not noticed P's tank coming from the side. P saw the chance. Never interrupt an enemy making a mistake. Napoleon had said, the Panther commander was focused forward, showing his side armor to Poole's approach. P gave the fire command, gunner sabot Panther left flank. Ola moved the turret smoothly, putting the crosshairs of his sight on the Panther's side armor just below the turret ring. On the way, the 76mm gun fired the round, covered the distance in less than a second. The armor-piercing round hit the Panther's side armor and went through cleanly, exploding inside the crew compartment. The German tank shook. Smoke poured from its hatches, and moments later flames appeared. The crew tried to get out, but the internal explosion had killed or stunned them. Only one German crewman got out before the ammunition blew. Up destroying the turret, P had destroyed his second Panther again using smart tactics, not bigger firepower. He had moved to get a flank shot where his 76mm gun worked, and his crew did everything perfectly. The American column kept moving now with P's tank in the lead, having earned the spearhead spot by skill, not by order. August 7, 1944. The Files Gap fight was one of the most important battles of the Normandy campaign. Allied forces tried to trap and destroy the German 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army in a pocket near the town of Files. If they succeeded, the main German forces in Normandy would be destroyed, and the way for a fast advance across France to the German border would be open. The plan was for American forces moving north from the south to meet British and Canadian forces coming south from the north, closing the gap and trapping the Germans. Poole's tank-led Task Force Y of Combat Command A, while Lieutenant Colonel Richardson listened on the radio from his command post. The fight was chaotic and desperate. German units tried to break out of the trap, attacking American positions with everything they had. Other German units already west of the pocket tried to punch through American lines to make a way for their trapped comrades. The result was a huge, confused fight, with both sides mixed together, fighting ambushes and sudden battles in the Norman countryside. As Poole's column moved forward, they saw groups of German soldiers trying to run on foot. Leaving their vehicles and heavy weapons, Lieutenant Colonel Richardson listened on the radio as P got close to a group of fleeing German troops. Poole's voice came over the radio. "Ain't got the heart to kill them." The urge to be humane was real and showed. P's character, even with his fierce reputation, German soldiers running on foot, were not a direct threat to Poole's mission, but Richardson knew P understood the tactical situation. Immediately came the sound of Close's .30 caliber bow machine gun firing. Richardson heard Poole's voice again. "Watch the bastards run. Give it to them close." The humane feeling lasted only a moment before the need of the mission took over. German soldiers running still could be a threat if they got away, regrouped, and armed. Again, more Americans would die fighting them later if P let them go. Now Poole's job was to destroy the enemy's ability to fight, and he did it without hesitation, despite what he felt. The incident showed how combat was morally complicated, where good men must do terrible things for the mission. From August 29th to 31st, 1944, P led the lead tank in an attack that earned him the Distinguished Service Cross America's second highest medal for bravery. The citation, approved by division leaders and signed by senior commanders, described P's actions in detail. P was moving ahead alone of his task force, outpacing supporting tanks in his aggressive push. Enemy contact was expected, but Poole's exact location and the enemy setup were unclear in the changing fight. Over 3 days, often alone, or with 1 or 2 other tanks, P's crew fought and destroyed 4 German tanks. The first was a Mark V destroyed from ambush as it tried to cross a road. The second was a Sturmgeschütz, assault gun, destroyed at close range after a short-running fight through a village. The third and fourth were Panthers destroyed in one fight, where Poole's tank came under fire from both and destroyed both using better shooting and crew discipline. Besides the tanks, Poole's crew destroyed 3 anti-tank guns set to ambush American armor, about 50 unarmored vehicles, including half-tracks, trucks, and cars, and killed or wounded a huge number of enemy soldiers. The citation said, "Pia's courage and leadership under heavy enemy fire allowed the fast advance of his task force with few casualties. His great heroism, personal bravery, and strong devotion to duty showed the highest military traditions. The award papers did not fully show the danger of what P had done." Moving, alone or with minimal support, P had put himself in the most dangerous spot to draw enemy fire and find enemy positions. Every anti-tank gun he destroyed had fired at least 1 shot at his tank before he killed it. Every German tank he faced could have destroyed his Sherman before he could destroy it. P survived because of skill, aggression, crew training, and extraordinary luck. The Distinguished Service Cross recognized his actions, though many who saw them thought he deserved the Medal of Honor. Over those 3 days in late August, P showed that aggressive action, better tactics, and excellent crew work could beat numbers and technical disadvantages. The Sherman was weaker than German medium and heavy tanks in armor and firepower. But P proved that the tank with the better crew won the fight, not the tank with thicker armor or bigger guns. His example made other tank commanders in the division fight more aggressively, take smart risks, and get close to the enemy, instead of fighting from far away. where German tanks had the advantage. August 17, 1944, Combat Command A was clearing the last German forces from a village during the chase across France. The war had become a pursuit, with German forces running toward Germany, and American tanks racing to catch and destroy them before they could set new defenses. P's tank was leading the attack when disaster came from an unexpected direction. American P-38 Lightning fighter bombers appeared overhead, looking for German tanks. The P-38 was a twin-engine plane with a central crew easy to recognize and usually a help for American troops. The P-38s gave close air support, attacked German convoys, and helped by spotting enemy positions and calling in artillery. But that day, the P-38 pilots made a fatal mistake. From several thousand feet, all tanks looked the same. The special shapes that let soldiers on the ground tell friend from foe were harder to see from the air. The lead P-38 pilot thought the tanks in the village were German. He called out the target and started his attack run, followed by his wingmen. The P-38s had rockets deadly against armor when fired from diving attacks. P saw the planes diving and knew the danger. He grabbed the radio handset, calling frantically to say his unit was friendly. American forces, but the P-38s were already committed. The first plane fired a salvo of rockets. The projectiles streaked down. Rockets streaked toward In the Mood. Trailing smoke, Poole had no time to react. No way to escape. The rockets hit the Sherman with devastating effect. One struck the turret, another hit the engine. Compartment and explosions erupted across the tank. P shouted the order to abandon the vehicle. The crew bailed out with practiced speed, scrambling from hatches as fire and smoke surrounded the Sherman. All 5 men got out, though several had minor injuries from the explosions and the desperate exit. They ran clear just seconds before ammunition began cooking off, sending flames and secondary explosions skyward In the Mood. The second Sherman with that name was destroyed, not by Germans, but by friendly fire from their own air support. The incident crushed P and his crew. They had survived nearly 2 months of intense combat, had destroyed dozens of enemy vehicles, had fought across France only to lose their tank to American planes. The P-38 pilots were reportedly upset when they learned of the mistake. Friendly fire was a tragic reality of modern war, where fast operations and split-second decisions sometimes caused disasters. But knowing why did not lessen the impact on Poole's OEB crew. For the second time in less than 2 months, P and his crew were without a tank. They had survived 2 complete losses, first to a German Panzerfaust, now to American rockets. The odds of surviving 1 tank loss were poor. Surviving 2 seemed almost miraculous. But P's luck was not done. Within days, they received their 3rd Sherman, another M4A1 76W with the 76mm gun. Once again, P had In the Mood painted on the hull. The tradition continued. The name was now known throughout the 3rd Armored Division as belonging to the crew that led every attack, destroyed more enemy vehicles than any other crew, and seemed to have a charmed life despite constant danger. The 3rd In the Mood would carry P and his crew through another month of combat, through the advance to the German border, through the breakthrough of the Siegfried Line, to the final battle that would end P's war. September 1944, the 3rd Armored Division moved rapidly across France into Belgium, pursuing German forces. Retreating to the Siegfried Line, Germany's defensive fortifications along its western border. The Siegfried Line, or West Wall to the Germans, had bunkers, tank obstacles, and minefields stretching for hundreds of miles. Built in the 1930s as a defensive line against France, The fortifications had been neglected during Germany's years of offensive victories. Now, with Allied forces near German soil, the Wehrmacht was scrambling to man the Siegfried Line and prepare it to slow the Allies. The race to reach the Siegfried Line before the Germans fully occupied it became critical. If the Allies could break through while defenses were weak, they might push into Germany before winter. But if the Germans held the line with enough forces, the Allies would face months of bloody fighting. Poole's tank kept leading attacks during this pursuit. His crew's count of destroyed enemy vehicles climbed steadily. By early September, P had personally destroyed over 250 enemy vehicles, including at least 12 tanks. The number of German soldiers killed by his crew exceeded 1, usually, though exact counts were impossible. They had also captured about 250 prisoners, often entire units, surrendering when faced with the aggressive American tank that seemed to appear everywhere. P's reputation had grown legendary within the 3rd Armored Division. Other tank commanders studied his tactics, trying to figure out his success. Infantry units requested Poole's tank for support during hard attacks, knowing War Daddy would lead the way, regardless of Resistance Division headquarters. Recognized Poole's value as a combat leader and inspiration, but they also knew his constant exposure made survival unlikely. The law of averages suggested even the best luck would run out. In mid-September, headquarters decided P and his crew would be sent home to the United States for a war bonds tour. They had earned the rest. They had survived 3 tank losses, fought in 21 major attacks, and built a combat record unmatched by any other American tank crew. Their story would inspire Americans. At home, help sell war bonds and give these soldiers a well-deserved break. Orders were cut. P and his crew would complete one final mission. Then they would be withdrawn from the front and sent home. September 19, 1944. Münsterbusch, Germany. The final mission began in darkness. The 3rd Armored Division's Combat Command A was ordered to advance toward Aachen, Germany's first major city, to face Allied attack. The approach to Aachen required clearing small towns and villages that protected the city's west. Münsterbusch was one such village about 6 miles from Aachen. A small collection of buildings and farms turned into a German defensive strongpoint. Poole's orders for this final day were clear. Do not spearhead, stay on the flank. The A mission was simple. Provide support for other units in the main attack, but avoid the most dangerous positions. Headquarters wanted P and his crew to survive this last mission. P understood the orders, but his nature and 3 months of combat told him no position in a tank battle was truly safe. The attack began at first light. American tanks advanced with infantry moving alongside to clear buildings and suppress anti-tank weapons. German resistance was immediate and fierce. The approaches to Aachen were vital, and every yard was contested. Artillery fire crashed down. Mortar rounds exploded among advancing Americans. The crack of German 18-18 guns announced anti-tank weapons, and Shermans began burning. Poole's tank moved on the flank, as ordered, providing cover for the main attack. The crew worked with efficiency, born of 3 months of combat. Ola scanned for targets through his gun sight. Boggs stood ready with ammunition. Richards maneuvered the Sherman to firing positions. P identified close, watched the flanks. With his bow machine gun, P stood in the commander's hatch, exposed as always, directing fire and monitoring the radio. However, Willis Ole was not in the tank that morning. Ola had been sent temporarily back to the United States as part of the Army's rotation of combat veterans to give them rest and use their experience for training. In Ole's place on the main gun was Private First Class Paul Kenneth King, 20 years old, from Anderson County, Tennessee. King was experienced and capable, but lacked Ohl's 3 months of combat with Poole's crew, the synchronization. Poole's original crew had developed over dozens of battles was slightly reduced. Though King did his best, the attack moved into Münsterbusch. Buildings gave cover to German defenders. Every window, doorway, and pile of rubble could hide a panzer team or machine gun nest. The fighting became close and brutal. Tanks fired high explosive rounds into buildings suspected of enemy forces might be inside. Infantry cleared houses room by room. German soldiers fought desperately, knowing they were defending German soil. Poole's tank reached a street intersection in Münsterbusch. The position gave good fields of fire down multiple streets, letting P support the main attack while staying relatively protected. For a brief moment, things seemed under control. American forces were advancing. German resistance was fierce. But being overcome, P might actually survive this final mission and make it home. Then disaster struck with the sudden violence that tank combat always brought. A German Panther tank, hidden in a strong position with excellent fields of fire, opened up on the American armor. The Panther commander had placed his tank carefully, waiting for Sherman's to enter his killing zone. He saw P's tank as a priority target, maybe because of the in-the-mood markings, maybe because it was the closest, maybe because the most dangerous enemy should be engaged first. The Panther's 75 mm KWK-42 gun fired twice in rapid succession. Both rounds hit. In the mood with deadly accuracy, the first armor-piercing round struck the Sherman's turret, penetrating the armor and exploding inside. The second round hit almost at the same time, striking the hull and destroying internal systems. The explosions inside the turret killed Private First Class Paul Kenneth King instantly. The young gunner from Tennessee, filling in for Ola on what was supposed to be a safer mission, died in a flash of superheated metal and force. He never had a chance to react. P, standing in the commander's hatch, was hit by shrapnel and blast from the penetrating rounds. Metal fragments tore into his right leg, causing massive trauma. The concussion from the explosions stunned him, but some survival instinct built through months of combat drove him to order bail out. The surviving crew scrambled from the dying tank. Richards and Close exited through the hull hatches, Richards overcoming his fear to escape through the driver's hatch. Boggs squeezed through the loader's hatch. Despite injuries, P tried to climb out through the commander's hatch, but his shattered right leg would not hold his weight. He struggled, fighting shock and pain, knowing the tank might explode. Then the Sherman tipped forward into a large shell crater. The forward motion threw P partially out of the turret, but trapped him against the hatch rim. His crew, already clear of the tank, turned back. Despite danger to help, they pulled P free and dragged him away. As ammunition began cooking off inside the hull, they had maybe seconds to spare. P was conscious, but in shock. His right leg was mangled beyond repair, shattered by shrapnel and blast. Blood loss was severe. The crew called for medics while giving what first aid they could with the limited supplies they had in combat. Medics arrived within minutes and stabilized Poole, preparing him for evacuation to the rear. The crew watched as their commander was loaded onto a jeep and driven toward a field hospital. They had survived 3 tank losses together, fought through 83 days of continuous combat, destroyed 258 enemy vehicles, and killed over 1,000 German soldiers. But Paul Kenneth King was dead, and War Daddy's war was over. P was evacuated through the medical system, moving from a field hospital to a base hospital, and eventually to a hospital in the United States. The damage to his right Leg was too severe to repair. Surgeons amputated the leg 8 inches above the knee, removing the shattered bone and torn tissue in an operation that saved Poole's life, but ended his career as a tank commander. The recovery was long and painful. Poole endured multiple surgeries, fought through infections, and learned to walk again with a prosthetic leg. But he was alive. The final statistics of Pea's combat service were unmatched in American military history. In 83 days of combat, from June 29th to September 19, 1944, P and his crew destroyed 258 enemy armored vehicles, including 12 confirmed tank kills. They killed or wounded over 1,000 German soldiers and captured about 250 prisoners. They led 21 major attacks, always spearheading, always in the most dangerous position. P survived 3 complete losses of his tank, first to a Panzerfaust, then to friendly fire, and finally to a German Panther. His crew survived with him through the first 2 losses, but Paul Kenneth King paid the ultimate price in the final battle. P was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions from August 29 to 31, 1944. He received the Legion of Merit for his exceptional service throughout the campaign. The Silver Star was awarded for specific acts of valor. The Purple Heart recognized his wounds. The Belgian Führer honored his contributions to the liberation of Belgium. Years later, France awarded P the Legion of Honor, with the grade of Chevalier. P was twice nominated for the Medal of Honor. The first nomination's paperwork was reportedly lost in the chaotic final months of the war in Europe. The second nomination was reviewed by the Army Recommendation Board, but was rejected. The official reason said tank crews served weapons, and therefore individual heroism in tank combat did not merit the Medal of Honor. This reflected an infantry-centered view in the Army Awards, system that failed to recognize the reality of armored combat, where the tank commander's decisions, leadership, and tactical skill determined success or failure. Many who served with P believed the rejection was a grave injustice. Poole's actions, over 83 days of combat, showed heroism and leadership that went beyond the standards for the Medal of Honor, but the decision stood comparing Poole's achievements to the wider context of World War II. Armored warfare shows just how exceptional his record was. The United States produced about 49 Sherman tanks during World War II, a massive effort that gave American and Allied forces numerical superiority over German armor. Germany produced about 6,000 Panther tanks and 1,350 Tiger tanks. On paper, German tanks were better in armor and firepower. The Panther's 75mm gun could destroy a Sherman at over 2,000 yards, while the Sherman's 76mm gun needed less than 1,000 yards to reliably penetrate Panther frontal armor. The Tiger's 88mm gun was even more powerful, but P proved that superior tactics, crew training, and aggressive leadership could overcome technical disadvantages. His 12 confirmed tank kills included multiple Panthers, the most feared German tank by the American infantry. He destroyed these stronger vehicles through better crew work positioning and faster shooting. Poole's example inspired an entire generation of American tankers to fight aggressively, closing the range where American advantages in reliability, rate of fire, and crew training could make up for weaker guns and thinner armor. After recovering from his wounds and learning to walk with a prosthetic leg, P faced a choice about his future. He could take a medical discharge and return to civilian life in Texas. Many soldiers would have made that choice, having given more than enough to their country. But P loved the Army. The military had become his life, his career, his identity. He had risen from a farm boy with no prospects beyond agriculture to become the most successful tank commander in American history. He wanted to keep serving. P re-enlisted in July 1948, choosing to remain in the Army despite his disability. The Army valued his experience and sacrifice and gave him positions where he could teach the next generation of tankers. P served in training and advisory roles, passing on the lessons he learned in combat to soldiers who would fight in future wars. His skill in armored tactics, his understanding of tank gunnery and maneuver, and his leadership made him an invaluable instructor. Paul retired from the Army on September 19, 1960, exactly 16 years, to the day after his final battle at Musterbusch. The coincidence of dates was not planned, but seemed fitting. He retired with the rank of Chief Warrant Officer II, showing his technical skill and leadership. His career spanned 19 years of service, from his enlistment in June 1941 to his retirement in September 1960, including 3 months of combat that shaped his life and inspired generations of American soldiers. In retirement, P settled in Keene, Texas, near Fort Hood, one of the Army's main armor training bases. He stayed connected to the military community, attending 3rd Armored Division reunions, writing to veterans he had served with, and sometimes speaking to military audiences about his combat experiences. He was a devoted family man, raising 8 children, with his wife Evelyn, 4 sons, and 4 daughters. The marriage that began during a short leave in December 1942 lasted through war wounds and the challenges of military life until P's death, but tragedy struck P's family in a way that echoed his own combat service. His son, Captain Jerry Lynn Poole Sr., followed his father into the Army and became a Special Forces officer. Jerry P. served in Vietnam during the war's most intense period, leading reconnaissance teams deep into enemy territory as part of MACVS Military Assistance Command, Vietnam Studies and Observations Group. MACVS carried out some of the war's most dangerous missions, sending small teams into Laos, Cambodia, and North Vietnam to gather intelligence and carry out direct action. On March 24, 1970, Captain Jerry Lynn Poole was leading RT Pennsylvania, one of MACVS's recon teams. His team was operating in Ratanakiri Province, Cambodia, about 14 miles inside the country, scouting North Vietnamese supply routes. The helicopter carrying P's team came under heavy enemy fire, was hit, exploded, and crashed. Killing all 7 soldiers aboard. Captain P was 29 years old. His body stayed in Cambodia, listed as missing in action for over 25 years. The search for Captain Poole's remains became part of the long effort to account for American soldiers missing in Southeast Asia. Joint recovery teams from the U.S., Vietnam, and Cambodia searched the crash site area over decades. On April 12, 1995, a recovery team found remains believed to be from the helicopter. The remains were taken to the U.S. Army Central Identification Laboratory in Hawaii, where forensic specialists identified them using dental records, DNA, and other methods on June 20, 2001. More than 31 years after his death, the remains were positively identified as Captain Jerry Lynn Poole Sr. He was finally coming home. Captain P was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. His name had been listed on the corpse of the missing at the Honolulu Memorial until his remains were found and identified. For Lafayette Poole, the loss of his son to war was devastating. He understood better than most the risks of military service and the possibility of death in combat. But knowing this did not lessen the pain of losing a child. Lafayette Green Poole died on May 30, 1991 in Keene, Texas. He was 71 years old, having lived nearly 47 years after his wounding at Musterbusch. He was buried with military honors recognized As one of America's greatest tank commanders, his legacy lived on in the soldiers he trained, the tactics he proved, and the example he set for aggressive, effective leadership in armored combat. In 1993, 2 years after Pease' death, Fort Knox, Kentucky, the home of Army Armor Training, dedicated the Tank Driver Training Simulator Hall in his honor. The facility was informally known as the SSG Lafayette G Pool Room, ensuring every tanker trained at Fort Knox would learn the story of War Daddy and his crew. Lieutenant Colonel Olin M. Brewster, who had served with P in the 3rd Armored Division during World War II, gave the dedication speech. Brewster spoke about P's courage, his tactical brilliance, his devotion to his crew, and his impact on American armored warfare. The dedication ensured P's story would continue to inspire future generations of American tankers. Pool's story reached an even wider audience in 2014 with the release of the film Fury, starring Brad Pitt, the film's main character. A Sherman tank commander named War Daddy was explicitly patterned after Lafayette Pool. The Texas State Historical Association confirmed the character was based on Pool's combat experiences and leadership style. The film showed the brutal reality of tank combat in World War II. The numerical and technical disadvantages American tankers faced against German armor, and the aggressive tactics men like Pool used to overcome those disadvantages. While the film was Hollywood and added drama, it introduced Pool's story to millions of people who might never have known it. Otherwise, the film showed a Sherman tank crew fighting against overwhelming odds, using superior tactics and crew work to defeat technically better German tanks. It captured the essence of Pool's combat style. The character War Daddy's aggressive leadership, his refusal to retreat, his determination to close with the enemy and destroy them before they could use their superior firepower, came directly from P's documented combat style and the eyewitness accounts of soldiers who served with him in the 3rd Armored Division. P's legacy goes beyond films and memorial halls. His combat record remains unmatched in American military history. No other American tank commander in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, or any later war has come close to P's 258 enemy vehicles destroyed in just 83 days of combat. The scale of his achievements is clear when compared to other crews. The average Sherman tank in Europe survived about 11 days of combat before being knocked out or destroyed. Pool's crew survived 83 days across 3 different tanks, continuing to fight effectively after each loss. The average American tank crew destroyed 1 to 3 enemy vehicles during their entire service. Pool's crew destroyed 258. The secret to P's success was not better equipment or bigger forces, but the basic principles of tank warfare that he understood and used without fail. Aggressive maneuvering to close the range where German technical advantages mattered less. Superior crew training that allowed faster aiming, more accurate shooting, and better decisions under pressure. Never giving ground, forcing Germans to fight at close range where American rate of fire and crew coordination were decisive. Willingness to accept risk and lead from the front, inspiring subordinates, and forcing the enemy to deal with a threat that never let them set up or use their superior weapons. These principles, proven in the hedgerows of Normandy and the plains of France, became core doctrine for American armored forces. The aggressive, close combat tactics Pool pioneered influenced tank commander training through the Cold War and into the modern era. The focus on crew training to create the kind of precise teamwork Pool's crew showed became central to American tank warfare doctrine. The lesson that superior tactics and training could beat technically better equipment was proven by Pool's record and shaped American thinking about armored warfare for generations. Pool's influence also extended to leadership and military culture. his refusal to accept a commission, choosing instead to fight from a tank rather than command from headquarters, showed his commitment to leading from the front and became an example for military leaders at all levels. His care for his crew, his concern for their safety, combined with high standards for performance, created a leadership model that balanced looking after people with completing the mission. His aggressive pursuit of the enemy, guided by tactics and careful positioning, showed that boldness did not mean recklessness, and that aggression used correctly could be the safest choice in combat. The nickname War Daddy captured Poole's leadership. He was both the protective father, making sure his crew had the best training equipment and support, and the aggressive fighter leading them into the most dangerous situations. His crew trusted him completely because they knew he would never ask them to do anything he would not. Do himself would never stay safe while sending them into danger, and would never waste their lives on meaningless goals. That trust, built over months of training and proven in dozens of battles, created a bond between P and his crew that death could not break. The crew members who survived 83 days of combat carried his lessons and memory through their lives. Wilbert Richards, the small driver who could move a Sherman through impossible positions, returned home but stayed in contact with other crew and went to 3rd Armored Division reunions when he could. Bertrand Close, the teenage bow gunner who had been so deadly with his machine gun, returned home and built a life shaped by his time with Poole Delbert Boggs, the loader whose speed and reliability gave Poole's tank its amazing rate of fire, carried the memory of being a pup through his post-war life. Willis Ole, who had been sent back to the United States and so escaped the final battle that killed Paul Kenneth King and wounded P, lived with the mix of survivor guilt and relief. He had been Poole's gunner for most of the 83-day campaign, had fired the shots that destroyed dozens of enemy vehicles, and had been part of the most successful tank crew in American history. His temporary transfer saved his life, but meant he was not there when his crew needed him most. Paul Kenneth King, the young replacement gunner from Anderson County, Tennessee, who served with Poole for only one mission, became in death a symbol of the randomness of combat casualties. King was experienced, capable, had survived previous fights with other crews, but had the misfortune be used against other units. German soldiers who could not fight, and morale effects on both sides went beyond the immediate battle. Every German tank Poole destroyed was one less threat to American infantry in French villages. Every half-track or truck eliminated meant fewer German soldiers could reach defensive positions. Every anti-tank gun knocked out saved American lives, but most importantly, Poole's example inspired other American tankers to fight more aggressively, to take calculated risks, and close with German armor rather than staying at a distance. The effect of thousands of American tank commanders following. Poole's principles even imperfectly spread his impact across the whole European theater. The changes in American tank tactics during the summer and fall of 1944, as units learned to fight more aggressively, owed something to Poole's success. The 3rd Armored Division's record reflected Poole's influence. The division led the advance from Normandy to Germany, covering more ground and destroying more enemy equipment than most other American armored divisions. Its aggressive tactics willingness to take risks and push deep into German territory created a culture of offensive action that Poole showed. While many factors helped the division succeed, the example set by its most successful tank commander shaped the division's fighting spirit. Poole's story also shows the bigger picture of American success in World War II. The United States started the war with equipment, in many ways, inferior to German weapons. The Sherman tank was outgunned and had weaker armor compared to German Panthers. And Tiger's American soldiers were often less experienced, than German troops who had been fighting since 1939. German tactics learned through years of combat were often better than American methods early in the campaign. But America had advantages that proved decisive industrial capacity that could produce 49 Erdwazero Sherman tanks to Germany only had 6,000 Panthers, so American forces could replace losses that would have been disasters for German units. Training that focused on crews working together and combined arms meant American units, while maybe less skilled individually than elite German units, fought better as teams. A culture that valued initiative and aggressive action at all levels meant men like Poole could rise based on ability rather than family background or party connections. Poole showed these American advantages. He was a farm boy from Texas with no military heritage who became the most effective American tank commander through skill, aggression, and leadership. His crew came from all over America, showing diversity that Nazi ideology said was a weakness, but actually was a strength. Together, they proved that superior tactics, training, and determination could beat technical inferiority and weaker equipment. Poole's approach to tank combat was very different from typical German tactics. German tank doctrine focused on technical superiority, encouraging commanders to fight from long range, where guns and armor gave an advantage. German training emphasized individual skill and technical knowledge, and German culture valued following orders and staying in formation. Poole did the opposite. He closed the distance to make German advantages useless. He emphasized teamwork over individual skill, knowing that 5 men working perfectly together could beat 5 skilled men working alone. He valued initiative and aggressive action over strict formation, often acting alone or with minimal support instead of waiting for coordinated attacks. These differences show broader contrasts between American and German military culture. The German army, shaped by Prussian tradition, valued hierarchy, discipline, and technical skill. The American army, shaped by frontier and democratic values, valued initiative, adaptability, and practical results. Poole succeeded because he lived the American way and used it against an enemy with different values. The proof of Poole's tactics came in the outcome of the war. German technical superiority in tanks did not stop defeat the Panthers and Tigers that dominated German tank production. In 1944 and 1945, could not make up for Germany's weak industry, overextended strategy, and years of losses. American Shermans, sometimes called death traps, by historians were crucial in defeating Germany because of numbers, better crew training, and aggressive tactics. Poole's story shows that American tank warfare in World War II was more complicated than simple stories suggest. Sherman tank is often shown in movies and books as a poorly designed death trap that got American soldiers killed because of weak guns and thin armor. This has some truth. The Sherman was outgunned and underarmed compared to German medium and heavy tanks. American tank crews did take heavy losses, and many Shermans were destroyed. But Poole's record shows that a Sherman with a well-trained aggressive crew could be very effective. Poole destroyed 258 enemy vehicles, including 12 tanks, while fighting from 3 different Shermans over 83 days. He survived 3 complete tank losses and kept fighting effectively after each one. His crew's success was far better than crews in technically superior German tanks. The lesson is clear in tank combat. And most fighting, the quality of the crew matters more than the machine itself. This lesson goes beyond World War II. Tanks in every war, militaries struggle between building better equipment and training soldiers well. There is always a temptation to think better. Machines can fix poor training or weak leadership. Poole's record proves that is wrong. The best equipment in the world in the hands of a poorly trained or timid crew will lose to weaker equipment used aggressively by well-trained soldiers. Modern armies still study Poole's record and learn lessons for today's warfare. The principles he showed are still useful, even with computerized fire control, modern armor, and guided weapons, aggressive maneuver to close with the enemy and fight where their advantages are useless. Superior crew training for coordination and fast decisions, leadership that inspires confidence and keeps morale high under the worst conditions. These lessons work no matter the technology. The Tank Driver Training Simulator Hall at Fort Knox is named for Poole to keep teaching these lessons. Every soldier who trains there learns about Lafayette Poole, his tactics, his leadership, and his combat record. The SSG Lafayette G. Poole Room is both a memorial and a classroom, a place where Poole's legacy lives on through soldiers who will fight in wars he never imagined with weapons he never knew. Poole's story also reminds us of the human cost of war and how survival in combat is often random. Poole survived 83 days of combat, 3 tank losses, and dozens of close calls where German rounds missed by inches or failed to penetrate when they should have. He destroyed hundreds of enemy vehicles and killed over 1,000 enemy soldiers. But in the end, he lost his leg to German fire and watched his replacement gunner die on what was supposed to be a safe mission before going home. The randomness of who lives and who dies in combat, how survival often depends more on luck than skill, runs through Poole's story. Paul Kenneth King's death on September 19, 1944, while filling in as Poole's gunner shows this clearly. King was not a regular crew member. He was filling in because Ole had been sent back to the United States. King was experienced and capable, had survived previous combat, but he happened to be in Poole's tank when a German Panther's aim was true. If Ola had been there, he might have died instead. Or perhaps Ola's greater experience with Poole's crew would have changed the battle. These questions have no answers. King died. Ole lived, and both results were the outcome of routine decisions by Army personnel officers who could not know the consequences. Poole's own survival through 83 days of combat, followed by his wounding on what was supposed to be his safest day, carries the same irony. He survived when most exposed, standing in the open turret, leading spearhead attacks, closing to point-blank range with German armor. He was wounded when he was supposed to stay on the flank, avoid danger, and survive one more day before going home. The lesson is clear in combat. There are no safe positions, no guarantees of survival, except not being there at all. Poole understood this from the beginning. Safety is an illusion. The only way to survive is to fight aggressively, shoot first, close with the enemy, and destroy them before they destroy you. This philosophy kept Poole alive for 83 days and made him the most successful American tank commander in history. It also cost him his leg and killed one of his crew members. Whether the price was worth paying depends on perspective. From a tactical standpoint, Poole's combat service was extremely valuable to the American war effort. From a personal standpoint, Poole paid a heavy price and lived with the consequences for nearly 50 years. Both truths exist at the same time, without contradiction. Poole's choice to re-enlist in 1948 and keep serving in the Army despite his disability shows he found meaning and purpose in military life that went beyond the physical and emotional costs. He had been changed by his war experience from a Texas farm boy into a soldier, from a soldier into a tank commander, from a tank commander into a legend. The Army became his identity, his career, his life's work. Returning to civilian life, farming or engineering or some ordinary job, must have seemed impossible for a man who had experienced what Poole experienced, accomplished what he accomplished. and survived what he survived. His 19 years of service from 1941 to 1960 spanned America's change from an isolationist nation with a small peacetime army to a global superpower with military forces around the EVU. World Poole enlisted before Pearl Harbor, when the Army still trained with wooden rifles and outdated equipment. He retired during the Cold War, when the Army had nuclear weapons and was deployed worldwide. He witnessed and took part in the most important expansion and transformation of American military power in history. His death in 1991, just months before the Soviet Union fell and the Cold War ended, closed a chapter of American military history that he had helped write the veterans of World War II, men like Poole, who had fought to defeat fascism and save democracy, were passing away quickly. By the early 1990s, their generation had saved the world from Nazi tyranny, rebuilt Europe and Japan through the Marshall Plan and occupation, and established the international order that shaped the second half of the 20th century. Poole's generation, tested in the fire of total war, proved that democracy could fight and win against totalitarianism, that free societies could match dictatorships in military power, that American values were worth fighting and dying for. Poole's legacy, shown in his combat record, his leadership example, and the soldiers he trained after the war, still shapes American military culture. The aggressive tactics he pioneered remain central to American tank doctrine. The focus on crew training and coordination that he showed continues to define American armored warfare. The model of leadership he gave, combining care for subordinates with high standards and personal example, remains an ideal for military leaders at all levels. But maybe Poole's most important legacy is simpler and more personal. He proved that an ordinary American, a farm boy from Texas, with no special advantages or privileges, could, through courage, skill, and determination, become extraordinary. He showed that leadership comes from character and action, not birth or rank. He demonstrated that in the ultimate test of combat, what matters is not the weapon you carry, but the courage you have and the training you have mastered. These lessons go beyond military service and reflect broader American values about individual achievement, opportunity, and the power of ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Lafayette Green Poole, War Daddy, the Texas farm boy, who became America's deadliest tank commander, earned his place in military history through 83 days of combat that remain unmatched in American armored warfare. His story, preserved in military records, survivor accounts, and now in popular culture through films and memorials, continues to inspire and teach. The lessons he gave through his example about aggressive action, superior training, and effective leadership remain important decades after his death. His legacy lives on in every American tanker who learns his story, studies his tactics, and tries to match his example of courage under fire and devotion to duty. In the end, Poole's story is about more than tanks and tactics, more than kill counts and combat records. It is about the transformation of a young man, from a farm in South Texas into a warrior who led from the front, fought with unmatched aggression, and inspired generations of soldiers. It is about the bond between crew members who trusted each other with their lives and fought as one unit through months of non-stop combat. It is about the cost of war measured in lost legs, lives ended, and families forever changed. It is about an America that could take farm boys, college students, factory workers, and teachers, and forge them into the military force that defeated fascism and preserved democracy. Lafayette Poole destroyed 258 enemy vehicles. He had 12 confirmed tank kills, killed over 1,000 enemy soldiers, and captured about 250 prisoners. These numbers tell part of his story, but the full story includes his refusal to accept a commission so he could fight from a tank, his devotion to his crew, and their total trust in his leadership. His survival through 3 tank losses, and his determination to keep fighting after each one. His choice to re-enlist, despite his disability, and serve another 12 years. His influence on generations of American tankers who learned his tactics and studied his example, his loss of his son to war in Vietnam, linking his World War II service to the next generation's conflict. His death in 1991, Haven. He witnessed America's victory in the Cold War that followed the Hot War where he made his name. The complete story is about a life defined by service, sacrifice, and leadership. It is about a man who found his calling in the chaos of combat, who discovered that he had gifts for tactical thinking and aggressive action that made him exceptional. It is about the price of those gifts paid in pain, blood, and the deaths of men who fought beside him. It is about a legacy that goes far beyond his own life, influencing military doctrine, inspiring soldiers, and showing the potential of ordinary Americans to become extraordinary when tested by the ultimate challenge of combat. Lafayette Greenpool, Staff Sergeant, United States Army, Chief Warrant Officer, 2 retired, holder of the Distinguished Service Cross, Legion of Merit, Silver Star, Purple Heart, Belgian Fourrure, and French Legion of Honor, destroyer of 258 enemy vehicles in 83 days of combat, America's deadliest tank commander, war daddy to his crew and legend to the army he served, died May 30th, 1991 in Keene, Texas. He was 71 years old. He left behind his wife, Evelyn, 8 children, and a military legacy that will last as long as armies study armored warfare. His story from a farm in South Texas to the battlefields of France to the Memorial Hall at Fort Knox represents the best of American military tradition: courage in combat, devotion to duty, leadership by example, sacrifice for country. These values, shown in Pool's life and service, continue to inspire and teach. War Daddy's war may have ended on September 19, 1944, but his legacy lives on.